Hello and welcome. Do you want to successfully complete the C202 OA exam? Then you are in the right place. Our website has free questions and answers for the C202 OA exam. We know OA exams are tough, so our guides and practice questions are all free. With over 100+ success stories, we have proven our videos will help you pass your exam on the first attempt. In this video, we will cover questions from strategic advantage, talent philosophy, legal compliance, workforce planning, employee retention. So, let's get started.
1. A retail company outperforms its rivals through exceptional customer service delivered by well-trained, motivated employees. Which HRM principle best explains why this company succeeds while competitors with similar products and locations fall behind in the market? A. Outsourcing reduces overhead costs. B. Technology replaces employee roles. C. Employees create competitive advantage. D. Lower wages improve profit margins. Do you know the answer? Correct answer. C. Employees create competitive advantage. Explanation. Option C is correct because employees are the ones who create, implement, and sustain a company's competitive advantage through their skills, motivation, and performance on the job every day. Option A is incorrect because outsourcing addresses cost reduction for specific tasks but does not explain how a company achieves superior customer service through its own workforce's daily performance and efforts. Option B is incorrect because technology supports employee work but cannot replace the human interactions and personal service quality that differentiate this company from its competitors in retail. Option D is incorrect because lower wages typically reduce employee motivation and increase turnover, which would weaken rather than strengthen the exceptional customer service driving this company's success. Alright, let's get into a concept that shows up all over this course: competitive advantage through people. The question describes a retail company that beats its competitors, even though those competitors sell similar products in similar locations. So what's different? The employees, they're well trained, they're motivated, and they deliver outstanding customer service. That's the differentiator. In strategic HRM, employees are the ones who create, implement, and sustain a company's competitive advantage. It's not about outsourcing to cut costs that handles specific tasks, but doesn't explain why customers keep coming back. It's not about technology replacing people. Tech supports what employees do, but it can't replicate genuine human interaction at a checkout counter or a help desk. And it's definitely not about paying people less. Lower wages tend to kill motivation and spike turnover, which is the opposite of what's driving this company's success. The correct answer is that employees create competitive advantage. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When you see a question about why one company outperforms another with similar products or locations, look for the answer that credits the workforce. The keyword well-trained, motivated employees points straight to competitive advantage through people. Quick recall hook. People power equals profit. The employees are the engine. Everything else is just the vehicle. 2. A tech startup wants to build a competitive advantage by developing innovative products faster than established rivals. The founder asks which area of HRM would most directly influence employees' ability to generate creative solutions and new product ideas consistently. A. Training and development programs. B. Payroll processing systems. C. Office layout and furniture. D. Annual company social events. Do you know the answer? Correct answer. A. Training and development programs. Explanation. Option A is correct because training and development directly influence what employees can do by building their skills, knowledge, and creative capabilities needed to generate innovative solutions. Option B is incorrect because payroll processing is an administrative function that handles salary distribution accurately and on time, but has no direct effect on employees' creative abilities or innovation. Option C is incorrect because while office design may contribute to comfort, it does not directly develop employees' skills or knowledge base required to consistently create innovative product ideas. Option D is incorrect because company social events may improve workplace relationships and morale, but do not build the specific technical skills and capabilities needed for product innovation. Now let's look at a question about which HRM area most directly fuels innovation. A tech startup wants to develop products faster than bigger competitors. The founder needs to know what will actually help employees generate creative solutions consistently. The answer is training and development programs. Training and development directly builds the skills, knowledge, and creative capabilities employees need. You're giving people new tools to think with. Payroll processing? That's administrative plumbing. It gets paychecks out on time, but it doesn't make anyone more innovative. Office layout and furniture might make people comfortable, but comfort alone doesn't teach anyone how to solve a technical problem in a new way. Annual social events can boost morale and relationships, but team bowling night doesn't build the deep technical skills you need for product innovation. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When a question asks what most directly influences employee skills or abilities, training and development is almost always the right pick. The keywords are skills, knowledge, capability, and creative. Quick recall hook, train the brain. If the question is about making employees better at what they do, it's training and development. 3. A hospital rewards nurses based on the number of patients seen per hour. Yet the hospital's strategy emphasizes high-quality patient care. Which HRM misalignment does this situation best represent? And what negative outcome is most likely to result from it? A. Training gaps reduce patient satisfaction. B. Understaffing causes longer wait times. C. Lack of feedback causes confusion. D. Misaligned rewards undermine strategy execution. Do you know the answer? Correct answer. D. Misaligned rewards undermine strategy execution. Explanation. Option D is correct because rewarding speed when the strategy demands quality creates a conflict between what employees will do and what they should do, directly undermining strategy execution. Option A is incorrect because the scenario does not mention any lack of training or skills deficiency among the nurses. The core issue is that the reward system contradicts the stated organisational strategy. Option B is incorrect because the problem described is not about staffing levels or employee shortages, but about a compensation system that encourages behaviour conflicting with the organisation's quality goals. Option C is incorrect because the nurses are receiving clear direction through the reward system. The problem is that this direction pushes them towards speed rather than the quality care strategy requires. This one trips people up, so pay attention. A hospital says its strategy is high-quality patient care, but then it rewards nurses based on how many patients they see per hour. Speed versus quality. See the conflict. That's a textbook case of misaligned rewards, undermining strategy execution. When you reward speed but your strategy demands quality, you're telling employees to do one thing while the organisation needs them doing another. Nurses will chase the incentive. That's human nature. It's not a training gap because the scenario never says nurses lack skills. It's not understaffing because the problem is the reward system, not headcount. And it's not a lack of feedback. Nurses are getting crystal clear feedback through their paychecks. It's just pushing them in the wrong direction. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When a question shows a reward system that contradicts the stated strategy, the answer is always about misalignment. Look for the conflict between what the company says it values and what it actually pays people to do. Quick recall hook. Pay signals priorities. Whatever you compensate for is what you'll get, period. 4. An accounting firm hires candidates without checking if they can work effectively in teams, even though all projects require close collaboration. Which of the three HRM influence areas on organisational performance is this firm neglecting most directly in this hiring scenario? A. What employees will do. B. What employees can do. C. What employees should do. D. What employees want to do. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer. B. What employees can do. Explanation. Option B is correct because staffing and hiring determine the capabilities and skills employees bring to the organisation, and failing to screen for teamwork ability leaves a gap in what employees can do. Option A is incorrect because what employees will do relates to motivation through compensation and performance management, not to the fundamental ability to collaborate that should be assessed during hiring. Option C is incorrect because what employees should do involves strategic planning and legal compliance that set direction for the organisation, not the assessment of individual candidate capabilities during recruitment. Option D is incorrect because this option is not one of the three recognised HRM influence areas on organisational performance described in the strategic HRM framework discussed in the course material. Let's talk about the three HRM influence areas on organisational performance. This is straight from the framework. The three areas are what employees should do, what employees can do, and what employees will do. An accounting firm requires close team collaboration on every project, but they never check whether candidates can actually work in teams during hiring. Which area did they neglect? It's what employees can do. Here's why: staffing and hiring determine the capabilities employees bring to the table. If you don't screen for teamwork ability during recruitment, you've got a gap in what your people are capable of. What employees will do relates to motivation, compensation, performance management, the incentive structure. That's not the issue here. What employees should do involves strategic planning and legal compliance that set the organisational direction. Also not the issue. And what employees want to do isn't even one of the three recognised HRM influence areas in this framework. It's a distractor. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. Memorise the three influence areas cold. Should do equals planning and law. Can do equals staffing and training. Will do equals compensation and performance management. If the scenario is about hiring or skills, the answer is can do. Quick recall hook. Can do equals capability. Hiring and training build what people are able to do. 5. Two competing hotels offer identical rooms and pricing. Hotel A invests heavily in employee development, clear performance goals, and merit-based rewards. Hotel B cuts HRM spending to reduce costs. Which outcome best explains the likely long-term difference between these two competitors? A. Hotel B saves money and catches up. B. Both hotels perform equally over time. C. Hotel A gains advantage through engaged employees. D. Hotel B attracts better talent with savings. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, C. Hotel A gains advantage through engaged employees. Explanation. Option C is correct because investing in development, goals and rewards creates engaged employees who deliver superior service, generating a sustainable competitive advantage that cost-cutting alone cannot replicate. Option A is incorrect because reducing HRM investment typically leads to lower employee engagement, higher turnover, and weaker customer service, which erodes competitive position rather than allowing a company to catch up. Option B is incorrect because identical products with different levels of employee engagement and service quality will produce different business outcomes over time as customers experience noticeably different service levels. Option D is incorrect because cutting HRM spending signals to potential employees that the company does not invest in its people, making it less attractive to talented candidates who seek development opportunities. Here we go with a side-by-side comparison. Two hotels, identical rooms, identical pricing. Hotel A invests in employee development, sets clear performance goals, and offers merit-based rewards. Hotel B slashes its HRM budget to save money. Over time, what happens? Hotel A wins. Investing in development, goals, and rewards creates engaged employees who deliver better service. That translates into a sustainable competitive advantage that cost-cutting alone just can't replicate. Hotel B might save a few bucks short-term, but reducing HRM investment usually drives employee engagement down, pushes turnover up, and weakens customer service. That erodes your position out. It doesn't help you catch up, and no, they won't perform equally. Identical products plus different levels of employee engagement will always produce different outcomes because customers notice the service difference. Hotel B also won't attract better talent by cutting HRM spending. Top candidates want employers who invest in their people, not companies that signal they don't care. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When you see two identical companies with different HRM investments, the one that invests in people will always win long-term. The keyword pattern is development plus goals plus rewards equals engagement equals advantage. Quick recall hook: invest in people, win the race. Identical products, different people, different results. 6. A company founded by a CEO who believes employees are long-term partners, invests in career development, and treats workers as stakeholders. A competing firm views employees as short-term, replaceable resources and minimizes training budgets. What concept best explains the root cause of these different approaches? A. Talent philosophy differences. B. Industry regulation requirements. C. Business strategy differences. D. Geographic location factors. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer: A. Talent philosophy differences. Explanation: Option A is correct because a talent philosophy reflects deeply held beliefs about how employees should be treated, typically shaped by company founders, and it directly drives decisions about development and retention. Option B is incorrect because industry regulations set minimum legal requirements for all companies equally, and do not explain why two firms in the same market treat their employees in fundamentally different ways. Option C is incorrect because while business strategy can influence employee management, the fundamental difference described here originates from the founder's beliefs about employee value, which defines the talent philosophy. Option D is incorrect because geographic location may affect labour market conditions, but does not determine whether a company views employees as long-term partners or as easily replaceable short-term resources. This question gets at the root of why different companies treat employees so differently. One CEO views employees as long-term partners, invests in careers, treats them as stakeholders. Another CEO treats employees as short-term replaceable parts and spends as little as possible on training. Same industry, completely opposite approaches. Why? Talent philosophy differences. A talent philosophy reflects the deeply held beliefs, usually shaped by founders, about how employees should be treated. It's the DNA of the company's people strategy. Industry regulations don't explain this because regulations apply equally to both firms. They set minimums, not philosophies. Business strategy might influence how you manage people, but the fundamental difference here comes from the founder's core beliefs about employee value, which is the definition of talent philosophy. Geographic location affects labour markets, sure, but it doesn't determine whether a company sees workers as partners or disposable resources. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When a question describes a founder's or CEO's beliefs about how to treat employees, partner versus resource, invest versus minimize, the answer is talent philosophy. Quick recall hook: founder's belief equals talent philosophy. The boss's view on people shapes everything. 7. A global financial services firm states that cultivating a diverse workforce is critical to meeting client needs and generating long-term shareholder value. This public commitment to employee investment and diversity most closely reflects which element of the firm's overall HRM approach. A. Its outsourcing strategy. B. Its performance management cycle. C. Its compensation structure. D. Its talent philosophy and HR strategy. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, D. Its talent philosophy and HR strategy. Explanation. Option D is correct because a public commitment to employee investment and diversity reflects the organization's talent philosophy and human resource strategy, which link employee values to the business strategy. Option A is incorrect because outsourcing involves contracting external vendors to perform specific tasks and has no direct connection to a company's stated beliefs about employee diversity and long-term investment. Option B is incorrect because performance management is a specific function involving goal setting and appraisals, not the broad organizational belief system about how employees should be valued and treated. Option C is incorrect because compensation structure deals with pay and benefits design, which is only one component of HRM and does not capture the breadth of a firm's stated commitment to diversity. A global financial services firm publicly states that cultivating a diverse workforce is critical to meeting client needs and generating long-term shareholder value. That public commitment to investing in employees and valuing diversity, what element of HRM does it reflect? It's the firm's talent philosophy and HR strategy. A talent philosophy connects what a company believes about its people to its broader business strategy. When a firm publicly commits to diversity and employee investment as a path to long-term value, that's the talent philosophy talking. Outsourcing? That's about hiring external vendors for specific tasks. Zero connection to a company's stated beliefs about diversity and employee investment. Performance management? That's goal setting and appraisals. A specific function, not a broad organizational belief system. Compensation structure. That's pay and benefits design. It matters, but it's just one slice of HRM, not the big picture commitment to diversity this question describes. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When a question talks about a company's public commitment, stated beliefs, or values regarding employees and diversity, that's talent philosophy and HR strategy. The giveaway words are commitment, values, beliefs, and long-term investment in people. Quick recall hook. Public values equal talent philosophy. When the company declares what it believes about people, that's philosophy. 8. A manufacturing company implements self-managed teams, shares financial information openly, provides extensive training, and ties compensation to company performance. Employees solve problems without a controlling supervisor. Which management approach does this company most clearly represent? A. Traditional hierarchical management. B. High-performance work system. C. Professional employer organization. D. Shared service center model. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, B. High-performance work system. Explanation. Option B is correct because high-performance work systems are defined by self-managed teams, decentralized decisions, extensive training, performance-based pay, and open information sharing, which all match this scenario exactly. Option A is incorrect because traditional hierarchical management relies on top-down control with supervisors directing employees, which is the opposite of the self-managed, decentralized approach described in this situation. Option C is incorrect because a professional employer organization is an external company that leases workers to other firms and manages their administrative needs, not an internal management philosophy or system. Option D is incorrect because a shared service center centralizes routine administrative HRM tasks like payroll and benefits processing, and it does not describe how frontline employees manage their own work. This question throws a bunch of workplace features at you and asks you to name the system. Let's run through them: self-managed teams, open financial information sharing, extensive training, compensation tied to company performance, and employees solving problems without a controlling supervisor. That's a high-performance work system, or HPWS. Every single element in the question maps directly to the HPWS definition. Decentralized decisions, autonomy, transparency, training, investment, and performance-based pay. Traditional hierarchical management is the opposite. Top-down control, supervisors directing everything. Nothing in this question suggests that. A professional employer organization, or PO, is an external company that leases workers and handles admin. That's not an internal management approach at all. A shared service center centralizes routine admin tasks like payroll. It's about processing, not about how employees manage their own work. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. If you see self-managed teams, decentralized decisions, information sharing, extensive training, and performance-based pay all in one scenario, that's HPWS. Those 5 features are the signature. Quick recall hook: HPWS equals high trust, high training, high pay for performance. All 3 together, every time. 9. A mid-sized company wants to align its staffing, training, performance management, and compensation practices with its business strategy of rapid international expansion. Which HRM concept best describes this effort to connect all people-related functions to a single strategic direction? A. Strategic human resource management. B. Outsourcing vendor selection. C. Employee grievance handling. D. Payroll system implementation. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer: A. Strategic human resource management. Explanation: Option A is correct because strategic human resource management aligns a company's values and goals with employee behaviors and connects all HRM functions into an integrated system supporting business strategy execution. Option B is incorrect because outsourcing vendor selection is a narrow operational decision about who performs specific tasks externally and does not describe the broad alignment of all HRM functions with business strategy. Option C is incorrect because employee grievance handling addresses individual workplace complaints and disputes, which is an important but limited function and not a company-wide strategic alignment of all HRM activities. Option D is incorrect because payroll system implementation is an administrative technology decision focused on processing employee compensation accurately, not on aligning the full range of HRM practices with strategy. A mid-sized company wants to connect its staffing, training, performance management, and compensation practices to its strategy of rapid international expansion. What concept describes tying all people-related functions to one strategic direction? Strategic human resource management. That's the whole point of strategic HRM, aligning a company's values and goals with employee behaviors and connecting all HRM functions into one integrated system that supports the business strategy. Outsourcing vendor selection is a narrow operational decision. It's about who handles specific external tasks, not about aligning your entire people strategy. Employee grievance handling addresses individual complaints. It's a necessary function, but it's not strategic alignment across the whole organization. Payroll system implementation is a technology and admin decision. It keeps paychecks accurate, doesn't connect HRM to strategy. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When a question describes connecting multiple HRM functions like staffing, training, and compensation to a single business strategy, the answer is strategic HRM. The keyword is align. Whenever you see align HRM with strategy, think strategic HRM. Quick recall hook: strategic HRM equals all functions, one direction. everything pointing toward the strategy. 10. Research suggests high-performance work systems can improve productivity by roughly 40%. Yet some employees find the increased responsibility stressful rather than motivating. What does this tension reveal about implementing high-involvement management approaches across a workforce? A. HPWS should be avoided entirely. B. Financial incentives solve all resistance. C. Only managers benefit from HPWS. D. Employee responses to HPWS vary individually. Do you know the answer? Correct answer: D. Employee responses to HPWS vary individually. Explanation: Option D is correct because while many employees thrive with greater responsibility and autonomy, others find it stressful, meaning organizations must recognize that individual responses to high-involvement systems differ. Option A is incorrect because research clearly shows significant productivity gains from high-performance work systems, so avoiding them entirely would mean forfeiting substantial benefits proven across multiple studies and organizations. Option B is incorrect because the tension described is about psychological comfort with increased responsibility and autonomy, which financial incentives alone cannot address since the issue involves individual work preferences. Option C is incorrect because high-performance work systems are designed to benefit employees through greater personal development, higher engagement, improved satisfaction, and better quality of work life, not only managers. Research says high-performance work systems can boost productivity by about 40%. That's big. But here's the wrinkle: some employees find all that extra responsibility stressful, not motivating. What does that tension tell us? Employee responses to HPWS vary individually. Some people thrive with autonomy and ownership. Others feel overwhelmed by it. The organization has to recognize that one-size-fits-all doesn't apply here. Should companies avoid HPWS entirely? No, The research clearly shows major productivity gains. You'd be throwing away proven benefits. Do financial incentives fix the resistance? No. The issue is psychological comfort with responsibility and autonomy, not money. Throwing cash at someone who's stressed by self-management doesn't solve the root problem, and it's not just managers who benefit. HPWS is designed to improve development, engagement satisfaction, and quality of work life for the employees themselves. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When a question presents a tension or trade-off within HPWS, benefits versus stress, productivity gains versus individual discomfort, the answer usually points to individual variation. Not everyone responds the same way. Quick recall hook: HPWS equals great system, different people. The system works, but people react differently. 11. A fast-growing sales company sets extremely aggressive quarterly targets and ties bonuses directly to hitting those numbers. Several employees begin falsifying customer records to reach their goals. Which factor does research identify as the strongest predictor of this type of unethical employee behavior? A. Lack of a written code of conduct. B. Pressure to meet unrealistic objectives. C. Absence of surveillance cameras. D. Poor employee onboarding programs. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer: B. Pressure to meet unrealistic objectives. Explanation: Option B is correct because research identifies pressure to meet unrealistic business objectives or deadlines as the factor most likely to cause employees to compromise an organization's ethical standards and behave unethically. Option A is incorrect because while a written code of conduct is valuable, its absence alone is not identified as the strongest predictor. The direct pressure from unrealistic targets drives unethical behavior more powerfully. Option C is incorrect because surveillance cameras are a monitoring tool, and their presence or absence does not address the underlying motivational pressure that research identifies as the primary driver of ethical violations. Option D is incorrect because onboarding programs affect new employee integration and initial training. But the primary driver of the unethical behavior described is the ongoing pressure from unrealistic performance targets. A sales company sets insanely aggressive quarterly targets and ties bonuses directly to hitting those numbers. Predictably, employees start falsifying customer records to reach their goals. What does research say is the strongest predictor of this kind of unethical behavior? Pressure to meet unrealistic objectives. Research is clear on this. When companies push employees toward goals they can't realistically achieve, people start cutting corners. The pressure to perform becomes the pressure to cheat. A written code of conduct matters, but its absence alone isn't the strongest predictor. You can have every policy document in the world, and people will still cheat if the targets are impossible. Surveillance cameras? Monitoring tools don't address the motivation behind the behavior. The driver isn't nobody's watching. It's, I'll lose my bonus if I don't hit these numbers. Poor onboarding? Onboarding affects initial integration, but the ongoing, relentless pressure from unrealistic targets is what actually pushes people into ethical violations. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. When a question describes employees behaving unethically, and the scenario mentions aggressive targets, quotas, or unrealistic deadlines, the answer is pressure from unrealistic objectives. Quick recall hook. Impossible goals equal ethical failures. Unrealistic pressure is the #1 predictor of unethical behavior. 12. A company wants to establish a formal document that describes its highest values and gives employees decision-making guidance about what is right and wrong in the workplace. Which type of document best serves this specific purpose of providing ethical decision-making guidance to employees? A. A code of ethics. B. An employee handbook. C. A benefits summary. D. A job description manual. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, A. A code of ethics. Explanation. Option A is correct because a code of ethics is specifically a decision-making guide that describes the highest values an organisation aspires to and specifies ethical rules about employee conduct. Option B is incorrect because an employee handbook covers a broad range of workplace policies, procedures, and general employment information, rather than serving specifically as an ethical decision-making guide for employees. Option C is incorrect because a benefits summary outlines the compensation and insurance packages available to employees, which serves an informational purpose unrelated to ethical guidance or moral decision-making. Option D is incorrect because a job description manual details role responsibilities, qualifications, and duties for specific positions and does not provide the ethical values or moral guidance that the company seeks. A company wants a formal document that describes its highest values and provides guidance on what's right and wrong in the workplace. What kind of document is that? A code of ethics. By definition, a code of ethics is a decision-making guide that describes the highest values an organisation aspires to and sets ethical rules about employee conduct. It's specifically built for moral guidance. An employee handbook covers a broad range of workplace policies: dress code, PTO policy, grievance procedures. It's informational, not specifically an ethical decision-making tool. A benefits summary outlines insurance and compensation packages. Useful, but it has nothing to do with ethical guidance. A job description manual details responsibilities and qualifications for specific roles. It tells you what to do in your job, not how to make ethical decisions. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. When a question mentions highest values, ethical guidance, or right and wrong, the answer is code of ethics. Don't confuse it with an employee handbook, which is broader. Quick recall hook. Values plus guidance equals code of ethics. It's the moral compass document. 13. An organisation has a strong written ethics policy, but managers routinely pressure employees to cut corners to meet deadlines. No employee has ever been disciplined for unethical shortcuts, and top performers who bend rules receive the largest bonuses. Which type of systemic ethics error does this organization primarily demonstrate? A. Omission error from missing policies. B. Commission error from flawed enforcement. C. External compliance violation. D. Remission error from ethical pressure. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, D. Remission error from ethical pressure. Explanation. Option D is correct because a remission error occurs when the organization pressures employees to make unethical choices, which is exactly what happens when managers push for corner cutting, despite having written policies. Option A is incorrect because omission errors involve a lack of written rules, yet this organization already has a strong written ethics policy in place. The failure is in enforcement and managerial behavior, not to missing documentation. Option B is incorrect because commission errors involve failing to follow established practices, which is a related but different issue. The primary problem here is active pressure from managers, encouraging employees to behave unethically. Option C is incorrect because the scenario describes an internal cultural problem where managers create pressure to cut corners, not a violation of external regulatory compliance requirements imposed by outside government agencies. This one tests your knowledge of systemic ethics errors. The company has a great written ethics policy. On paper, everything looks solid, but managers routinely pressure employees to cut corners, nobody gets disciplined for unethical shortcuts, and the biggest rule benders get the biggest bonuses. What kind of error is this? A remission error. A remission error happens when the organization actively pressures employees to make unethical choices. The policy exists, but the culture contradicts it. Managers are the pressure point here. They're pushing people toward the wrong behavior despite what the policy says. An omission error means the company never wrote the rules in the first place. That's not the case. There's a strong written policy already. A commission error involves failing to follow established practices. Related but different, the core problem here is the active pressure from managers, not just a failure to follow through. An external compliance violation would involve breaking outside regulatory rules. This scenario is entirely an internal cultural problem. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. For ethics error questions, remember the three types. Omission means no rules, commission means not following rules, and remission means pressure to break rules. If managers are actively pushing unethical behavior despite having policies, that's remission. Quick recall hook. Remission equals pressure. The re stands for really pushing you to cheat. 14. When evaluating whether a company's decision to cut all employees' pay equally instead of laying off some workers is ethical, which ethical standard focuses specifically on doing the most good while causing the least overall harm to everyone affected by the decision? A. The right standard. B. The virtue standard. C. The utilitarian standard. D. The fairness standard. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, C. The utilitarian standard. Explanation. Option C is correct, because the utilitarian standard evaluates ethics by determining which action best balances good over harm, focusing on doing the most good or causing the least harm to all affected parties. Option A is incorrect because the right standard evaluates actions based on whether they respect and protect the moral rights of everyone affected, such as privacy and truth, not on balancing overall good against harm. Option B is incorrect because the virtue standard asks whether an action is consistent with ideal virtues like civility and compassion, focusing on character rather than on calculating the overall balance of good and harm. Option D is incorrect because the fairness standard evaluates whether an action treats all people equally or fairly based on a defensible standard, which is about equitable treatment rather than maximizing total good. A company decides to cut everyone's pay equally instead of laying off some workers. When we ask whether that decision is ethical, which ethical standard focuses specifically on doing the most good while causing the least overall harm to everyone affected? The utilitarian standard. Utilitarianism is all about the math of consequences. Which action produces the best balance of good over harm for everyone involved? It's a cost-benefit analysis of ethics. The right standard is different. It evaluates whether an action respects moral rights like privacy, truth, and freedom. It doesn't calculate overall good versus harm. The virtue standard asks whether an action aligns with ideal character traits, like compassion and honesty. It's about who you are, not about maximizing outcomes. The fairness standard evaluates whether everyone is treated equitably based on a defensible standard. That's about equal treatment, not about totaling up good and harm across all parties. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. When a question mentions most good, least harm, or balancing good over harm, that's utilitarian. Each ethical standard has a signature phrase. Utilitarian equals good versus harm, rights equals moral rights, virtue equals character, fairness equals equal treatment. Quick recall hook. Utilitarian equals the greatest good calculator. It adds up good, subtracts harm, picks the biggest number. 15. HRM professionals are uniquely positioned to build an ethical organizational culture because their responsibilities span multiple areas that shape employee behavior. Which specific combination of HRM activities gives these professionals the greatest ability to influence ethical values and practices at every organizational level? A. Staffing, compensation, and employee relations. B. Hiring, training, evaluating, and rewarding. C. Office management and event planning. D. Budgeting, forecasting, and auditing. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, B. Hiring, training, evaluating, and rewarding. Explanation: option B is correct because HRM professionals influence ethical culture at all levels through hiring ethical employees, training them on ethics, evaluating their conduct, and rewarding ethical behavior consistently throughout the organization. Option A is incorrect because while staffing, compensation, and employee relations are important HRM functions, this combination omits training and evaluation, which are critical tools for building and reinforcing ethical behavior. Option C is incorrect because office management and event planning are administrative support activities that do not directly shape employee ethical behavior or allow HRM professionals to influence organizational values and conduct. Option D is incorrect because budgeting, forecasting, and auditing are primarily financial and analytical functions outside the core HRM responsibilities that directly shape employee ethical values, decisions, and behaviors. Why are HRM professionals in such a strong position to shape ethical culture? Because their responsibilities touch every stage of an employee's life cycle. The answer is hiring, training, evaluating, and rewarding. Think about it. HRM controls who gets in the door through hiring, what they learn through training, how their behavior is measured through the evaluations, and what gets reinforced through rewards. That's a complete loop of ethical influence at every organizational level. Option A, staffing, compensation, and employee relations, sounds reasonable, but it leaves out training and evaluation. Those are critical for teaching ethics and holding people accountable. Office management and event planning are support tasks. They don't shape ethical behavior or organizational values in any direct way. Budgeting, forecasting, and auditing are finance functions. They sit outside the core HRM activities that directly influence how people behave. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. When a question asks how HRM builds ethical culture, look for the answer that covers the full employee life cycle. Hire ethical people, train them on ethics, evaluate ethical conduct, reward ethical behavior. All four together. Quick recall hook. Hire, train, evaluate, reward. That's the ethics life cycle. 16. A qualified job applicant with a physical disability applies for a position at a company with over 50 employees. The applicant can perform all essential job functions with a minor workspace modification. Which federal law most directly requires this employer to provide a reasonable accommodation for this applicant? A. Americans with Disabilities Act. B. Family and Medical Leave Act. C. Fair Labor Standards Act. D. Equal Pay Act. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, A. Americans with Disabilities Act. Explanation. Option A is correct because the Americans with Disabilities Act prohibits discrimination against qualified individuals with disabilities and requires employers to provide reasonable accommodation so they can perform essential job functions. Option B is incorrect because the Family and Medical Leave Act addresses employee rights to take leave for personal or family medical reasons and job return guarantees, not workplace accommodations for disabled applicants. Option C is incorrect because the Fair Labor Standards Act establishes minimum wage and overtime rules for employees and does not address disability discrimination or the requirement to provide reasonable workplace accommodations. Option D is incorrect because the Equal Pay Act specifically prohibits wage discrimination based on sex, which is unrelated to the issue of providing reasonable accommodations for an applicant with a physical disability. A qualified job applicant with a physical disability applies to a company with over 50 employees. They can do every essential function of the job with a minor workspace modification. Which federal law requires the employer to provide that reasonable accommodation? The Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. The ADA prohibits discrimination against qualified individuals with disabilities and requires employers to provide reasonable accommodations so those individuals can perform essential job functions. That's exactly what this scenario describes. A qualified person who just needs a minor modification. The Family and Medical Leave Act, or FMLA, is about employee leave rights for medical and family reasons and job return guarantees. It's about time off, not about workspace modifications for disabled applicants. The Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, sets minimum wage and overtime rules. It's a compensation law. It has nothing to do with disability accommodations. The Equal Pay Act prohibits wage discrimination based on sex. Completely different protected class and completely different issue. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When you see disability, reasonable accommodation, and essential job functions in the same question, the answer is ADA every single time. Those three terms are the ADA's signature vocabulary. Quick recall hook. ADA equals accommodation for disability, always. Disability plus workplace modification equals ADA. 17. A company with over 100 employees plans to close a manufacturing plant permanently, affecting all 75 full-time workers. Under federal law, what advance notice obligation does this employer have? And which law specifically establishes this requirement for plant closings and mass layoffs? A. 30 days under COBRA. B. 90 days under FMLA. C. No advance notice is required. D. 60 days under the WARN Act. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, D. 60 days under the WARN Act. Explanation. Option D is correct because the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act requires employers with at least 100 employees to give 60 days advance notice for plant closings or mass layoffs of 50 or more. Option A is incorrect because COBRA is the Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act, which requires employers to offer continued health insurance coverage to terminated employees and has nothing to do with advance layoff notice. Option B is incorrect because FMLA is the Family and Medical Leave Act, which requires employers to provide leave for medical and family reasons and it does not establish any advance notice requirements for plant closings. Option C is incorrect because federal law does require advance notice in this situation. The WARN Act specifically mandates 60 days of notice when employers with 100 or more employees plan closings or mass layoffs. A company with over 100 employees plans to permanently close a manufacturing plant, affecting 75 full-time workers. What advance notice does federal law require? 60 days under the WARN Act. The Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act, or WARN Act, requires employers with at least 100 employees to give 60 calendar days of advance notice before plant closings or mass layoffs affecting 50 or more workers. This scenario checks every box. COBRA is a red herring here. The Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act is about continuing health insurance coverage after termination. It has nothing to do with advance notice of layoffs. FMLA covers medical and family leave, not plant closings or layoff notification. And no, advance notice is required. Federal law specifically mandates it through the WARN Act for exactly this type of situation. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When a question mentions plant closings, mass layoffs, 100 or more employees, and advance notice, the answer is 60 days under the WARN Act. Memorize those numbers. 100 employees, 60 days notice, 50 or more workers affected. Quick recall hook. WARN equals 60 days warning. The WARN Act warns you 60 days ahead. 18. A hiring manager at a large corporation rejects a qualified female applicant for a sales position and instead hires a less qualified male candidate. When questioned, the manager cannot provide a legitimate business reason for the decision. This situation most clearly represents which type of employment discrimination? A. Adverse impact discrimination. B. Reasonable accommodation failure. C. Disparate treatment discrimination. D. Affirmative action violation. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, C. Disparate treatment discrimination. Explanation. Option C is correct, because disparate treatment is intentional discrimination based on a protected characteristic, where the employment decision would have changed if the applicant's protected status were different. Option A is incorrect because adverse impact discrimination involves neutral policies that unintentionally affect a protected group disproportionately, not an intentional decision to reject one specific qualified applicant based on gender. Option B is incorrect because reasonable accommodation failure involves not providing workplace modifications for individuals with disabilities, which is unrelated to a gender-based hiring decision against a qualified female applicant. Option D is incorrect because affirmative action involves proactive steps to promote equal employment opportunity for underrepresented groups, and its violation would not typically describe an individual intentional discriminatory hiring decision. A hiring manager rejects a qualified female applicant and hires a less qualified male candidate instead. When asked why, no legitimate business reason. What type of discrimination is this? Disparate treatment. Disparate treatment is intentional discrimination based on a protected characteristic. The key test? Would the decision have been different if the applicant's protected status, in this case gender, were different? If yes, it's disparate treatment. Adverse impact is different. That's when a neutral policy unintentionally affects a protected group disproportionately. There's no neutral policy here, it's a direct individual decision to reject one specific person based on gender. Reasonable accommodation failure involves not providing workplace modifications for individuals with disabilities. Gender-based hiring has nothing to do with accommodation. Affirmative action violation involves failing to take proactive steps to promote equal opportunity for underrepresented groups. That's a systemic issue, not typically how you describe an individual intentional discriminatory hire. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. Disparate treatment equals intentional. Disparate impact equals unintentional. If the question describes a deliberate decision to treat someone differently based on a protected characteristic, with no legit business reason, that's disparate treatment every time. Quick recall hook. Treatment equals intent. Disparate treatment means someone intentionally treated you differently. 19. A company terminates an employee who then loses employer-sponsored health insurance coverage. Under federal law, which Act specifically requires that employer to offer the terminated employee an option to continue their health and dental insurance coverage for a limited period. A. The Affordable Care Act. B. COBRA. C. HIPAA. D. The Rehabilitation Act. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, B. COBRA. Explanation: option B is correct because the Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act requires employers with group health plans and 20 or more employees to offer continued health and dental coverage to terminated employees. Option A is incorrect because the Affordable Care Act focuses on making healthcare more affordable and accessible to Americans broadly and does not specifically require employers to continue coverage for individually terminated employees. Option C is incorrect because HIPAA provides standards for the electronic exchange, privacy, and security of health information, and does not address the continuation of health insurance coverage after employee termination. Option D is incorrect because the Rehabilitation Act prohibits discrimination against qualified individuals with disabilities and does not create any requirements for continuing health insurance coverage after an employee is terminated. An employee gets terminated and loses their employer-sponsored health insurance. Which federal act requires the employer to offer continued health and dental coverage for a limited period? COBRA. The Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. COBRA requires employers with group health plans and 20 or more employees to offer terminated employees the option to continue their health and dental coverage at their own expense for a limited time. It's a bridge, not permanent coverage. The Affordable Care Act made healthcare more broadly accessible, but it doesn't specifically require employers to continue coverage for individual terminated employees. That's COBRA's job. HIPAA sets standards for health information privacy and electronic exchange. It protects your medical data, not your insurance continuation rights. The Rehabilitation Act prohibits disability discrimination. It has nothing to do with health insurance continuation after termination. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When you see terminated employee, continued health coverage, or insurance after leaving a job, the answer is COBRA. Don't confuse it with the ACA, which is about broader healthcare access. COBRA is specifically about continuing existing employer coverage. Quick recall hook. COBRA equals coverage over between regular arrangements. It bridges the gap when you lose your job. 20. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission discovers that a large federal contractor has significantly below average female employment rates across multiple locations. Which government office would most likely initiate a compliance review of this contractor's hiring practices and affirmative action plans? A. The OFCCP. B. The Department of Education. C. The Federal Trade Commission. D. The Securities Exchange Commission. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A. The OFCCP. Explanation. Option A is correct because the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs administers equal employment opportunity programs for federal contractors and reviews those identified as having below average female or minority employment rates. Option B is incorrect because the Department of Education oversees educational institutions and student-related policies and does not have authority to review federal contractors' employment practices or affirmative action compliance. Option C is incorrect because the Federal Trade Commission regulates consumer protection and antitrust matters in business and does not administer or enforce federal contractor, equal employment opportunity programs, or affirmative action plans. Option D is incorrect because the Securities Exchange Commission regulates securities markets and protects investors from fraud, and it has no role in reviewing employment practices or affirmative action compliance of federal contractors. The EEOC discovers that a large federal contractor has significantly low female employment rates across multiple locations. Which government office would most likely initiate a compliance review? The OFCCP, the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs. The OFCCP specifically administers equal employment opportunity programs for federal contractors. When a contractor shows below average female or minority employment rates, the OFCCP is the agency that steps in to review hiring practices and affirmative action plans. The Department of Education oversees educational institutions and student-related policies. It doesn't review federal contractors' employment practices. The Federal Trade Commission handles consumer protection and antitrust. It regulates business competition, not employment compliance. The Securities Exchange Commission regulates securities markets and investor protection. Hiring practices of federal contractors are completely outside its scope. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. Anytime a question mentions federal contractor and compliance review for equal employment or affirmative action, the answer is OFCCP. That agency exists for one reason: policing federal contractor employment practices. Quick recall hook: OFCCP equals only federal contractors compliance police. If it's a federal contractor and employment compliance, it's OFCCP. 21. A growing retail chain wants to predict how many new store employees it will need over the next 3 years by examining its own historical hiring patterns and industry growth rates from the past decade. Which labour demand forecasting method does this approach best represent? A. Judgmental forecasting. B. Ratio analysis. C. Regression analysis. D. Trend analysis. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, D. Trend analysis. Explanation: Option D is correct because trend analysis uses relevant past employment patterns from the employer, the industry, or the nation to predict a company's future talent needs based on historical growth trends. Option A is incorrect because judgmental forecasting relies on the expertise and opinions of managers rather than on historical data patterns, making it a qualitative method rather than the data-driven approach described here. Option B is incorrect because ratio analysis converts estimated business activity levels into headcount needs using specific mathematical ratios between employees and business metrics, not broad historical pattern examination. Option C is incorrect because regression analysis is a more advanced statistical technique that incorporates multiple predictors simultaneously, which is more complex than simply examining past employment patterns and growth rates. Let's get into labour demand forecasting. You'll see several flavours of this on the exam. A growing retail chain wants to predict how many employees it needs over the next 3 years. It does this by examining its own historical hiring patterns and industry growth rates from the past decade. That's trend analysis. Trend analysis uses past employment patterns from the employer, the industry, or even national data to project future talent needs. You're looking backward to forecast forward. Judgmental forecasting is different. It relies on the expertise and opinions of managers. It's qualitative, gut feel driven. This scenario is data driven, not opinion driven. Ratio analysis converts estimated business activity into headcount using specific mathematical ratios. Think 5 assistants per 3 accountants. That's more precise and narrow than the broad historical pattern examination described here. Regression analysis is a more advanced statistical method that incorporates multiple predictors at once. That's a step up in complexity from simply examining past patterns and growth rates. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. When a question mentions historical patterns, past data, or growth trends over time, The answer is trend analysis. The word trend literally means pattern over time. Quick recall hook. Trend equals time travel. You look at the past to predict the future. 22. An accounting firm knows from experience that it needs 5 assistants for every 3 senior accountants to maintain productivity. If the firm plans to add 6 new senior accountants next year, which forecasting method would it use to calculate how many new assistants are needed? A. Trend analysis. B. Judgmental forecasting. C. Ratio analysis. D. Organizational restructuring. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, C. Ratio analysis. Explanation. Option C is correct because ratio analysis uses a mathematical staffing ratio that indexes headcount to a relevant business metric, converting planned staffing levels into the number of supporting employees needed. Option A is incorrect because trend analysis examines broad historical employment patterns and industry growth rates to predict future needs, not specific mathematical relationships between different employee categories within a firm. Option B is incorrect because judgmental forecasting depends on the expertise and subjective predictions of managers rather than on established mathematical ratios between employee categories, making it a qualitative approach. Option D is incorrect because organizational restructuring involves changing the company's internal structure and reporting relationships, not calculating the number of employees needed based on established staffing ratios between positions. Here's the next forecasting method: ratio analysis. An accounting firm knows it needs 5 assistants for every 3 senior accountants. If they're adding 6 new seniors next year, how do they figure out how many assistants to hire? Ratio analysis. Ratio analysis uses a mathematical staffing ratio that indexes headcount to a relevant business metric. 5:3 is the ratio. 6 new seniors means 10 new assistants. Simple math. Specific relationship between 2 employee categories. Trend analysis looks at broad historical employment patterns and industry growth rates. It's about the big picture over time, not a specific mathematical ratio between 2 job categories. Judgmental forecasting depends on managers' subjective predictions. There's nothing subjective here. The firm has a known, established ratio. Organizational restructuring involves changing the company's internal structure and reporting lines. It has nothing to do with calculating headcount from staffing ratios. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When a question gives you a specific number-to-number relationship between employees and a business metric, like 5/3 or 1 supervisor per 8 workers, that's ratio analysis. The math ratio is the giveaway. Quick recall hook. Ratio equals recipe. Like a recipe, it tells you exactly how much of each ingredient you need. 23. During the sudden economic disruption caused by a global pandemic, a company finds that its historical staffing ratios and growth trends are no longer reliable for predicting future labour needs. Which forecasting method becomes most valuable when past data patterns become unusable due to dramatic environmental changes? A. Judgmental forecasting. B. Trend analysis. C. Ratio analysis. D. Historical pattern replication. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A. Judgmental forecasting. Explanation. Option A is correct because when the environment changes dramatically and makes previous trends and ratios unusable, relying on the expertise and knowledge of experienced managers becomes the most valuable forecasting approach. Option B is incorrect because trend analysis depends entirely on past employment patterns continuing into the future. And when dramatic changes like a pandemic disrupt those patterns, this method becomes unreliable for predictions. Option C is incorrect because ratio analysis assumes relatively fixed relationships between business metrics and headcount, and dramatic environmental disruption breaks these established relationships, making the ratios inaccurate for forecasting. Option D is incorrect because historical pattern replication is not a recognized forecasting method, and even if it were, replicating past patterns during a period of dramatic change would produce inaccurate and misleading workforce predictions. Now here's the curveball. A global pandemic hits, all the historical staffing ratios, all the growth trends, suddenly unreliable. Past data patterns are broken. What forecasting method becomes most valuable when the data fails you? Judgmental forecasting. When the environment shifts dramatically, experienced managers' expertise and knowledge become the best tool you have. They can read the situation, interpret what's happening, and make informed guesses when the numbers no longer make sense. Trend analysis is toast in this situation. It depends entirely on past patterns continuing into the future. A pandemic breaks that assumption. Ratio analysis assumes relatively fixed relationships between business metrics and headcount. Dramatic disruption destroys those fixed relationships. Historical pattern replication isn't even a recognized forecasting method. And even if it were, replicating past patterns during a massive disruption would give you garbage predictions. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When a question describes a sudden disruption, pandemic, economic crisis, dramatic industry change that makes past data unreliable, the answer is judgmental forecasting. Data fails in chaos, human judgment steps in. Quick recall hook. Chaos equals call the experts. When data breaks, managers' brains take over. 24. A regional manager believes her stores will need fewer employees next year based on local market conditions. But corporate headquarters uses a company-wide growth projection to estimate more employees are needed. Which forecasting approach captures this tension between local manager estimates and top-level leadership predictions? A. Trend analysis versus ratio analysis. B. Bottom-up versus top-down judgmental forecasting. C. Internal versus external labour supply. D. Qualitative versus quantitative research. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, B. Bottom-up versus top-down judgmental forecasting. Explanation. Option B is correct because bottom-up forecasting starts with lower-level managers, estimates moving upward, while top-down forecasting relies on senior leaders' experience, creating the exact tension described in this scenario. Option A is incorrect because trend analysis and ratio analysis are both quantitative methods using historical data, and neither captures the conflict between local manager opinions and corporate leadership's different workforce predictions. Option C is incorrect because internal versus external labour supply addresses where candidates come from, rather than the disagreement between different organisational levels about how many employees will actually be needed. Option D is incorrect because while the tension involves subjective judgment, the specific distinction between bottom-up and top-down judgmental forecasting more precisely describes the conflict between local manager and corporate estimates. A regional manager thinks her stores will need fewer employees next year based on local conditions. Corporate headquarters disagrees. Their company-wide growth projections say more employees are needed. What captures this tension? Bottom-up versus top-down judgmental forecasting. Bottom-up forecasting starts with lower-level managers making estimates that move upward through the organisation. Top-down forecasting relies on senior leadership's experience and broader projections flowing downwards. When the two approaches disagree, you get exactly the tension described in this question. Trend analysis versus ratio analysis doesn't fit. Those are both quantitative, data-driven methods. Neither one captures a conflict between different levels of management opinion. Internal versus external labour supply is about where candidates come from, inside the company or outside. That has nothing to do with disagreements about how many employees you'll need. Qualitative versus quantitative research is in the right neighbourhood, but it's too broad. The specific distinction between bottom-up and top-down judgmental forecasting pinpoints the conflict more precisely. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. When a question describes a disagreement between local managers and corporate leadership about workforce needs, that's bottom-up versus top-down. Local equals bottom-up. Corporate equals top-down. Quick recall hook. Local manager equals bottom-up. Corporate equals top-down. Floor versus ceiling. 25. A company wants to use a forecasting technique that can simultaneously account for mall traffic, seasonal shopping trends, and local occupancy rates to predict the number of retail employees needed at each store location. Which forecasting method can incorporate all of these multiple predictors at once? A. Simple trend analysis. B. Basic ratio analysis. C. Managerial opinion surveys. D. Regression analysis. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, D. Regression analysis. Explanation: option D is correct, because regression analysis is an advanced statistical technique that can incorporate multiple predictors simultaneously, such as mall traffic, seasonal trends, and occupancy rates to forecast staffing needs. Option A is incorrect because simple trend analysis examines past employment patterns to project future needs but is limited to observing general trends and cannot simultaneously incorporate multiple independent predictor variables. Option B is incorrect because basic ratio analysis is limited to one predictor of labour demand at a time, such as labour hours per unit produced, and cannot combine multiple business metrics into a single forecasting model. Option C is incorrect because managerial opinion surveys rely on subjective expert judgment rather than statistical modelling, and they cannot systematically combine multiple quantitative predictors into a precise staffing forecast. A company wants one forecasting technique that can account for mall traffic, seasonal shopping trends, and local occupancy rates all at the same time to predict staffing needs at each store. Which method handles multiple predictors simultaneously? Regression analysis. Regression analysis is the heavyweight statistical technique that can incorporate multiple independent variables into a single forecasting model. You feed in several predictors, and it spits out a staffing estimate that accounts for all of them at once. Simple trend analysis looks at past employment patterns to project forward, but it's limited to observing general trends. It can't juggle multiple independent predictor variables simultaneously. Basic ratio analysis handles one predictor of labour demand at a time. Like labour hours per unit produced, it can't combine mall traffic and seasonal trends and occupancy rates into one model. Managerial opinion surveys rely on subjective judgment. They can't systematically combine multiple quantitative predictors into a precise statistical forecast. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. When a question lists multiple predictors, 3 or more variables that need to work together in one model, the answer is regression analysis. The keyword is simultaneously or multiple predictors at once. Quick recall hook. Regression equals multiple ingredients, one pot. It cooks all the variables together. 26. A manager notices that several team members complete only the bare minimum required and show no enthusiasm for company goals. They describe feeling like they have to do the work rather than wanting to do it. Which workplace issue does this behaviour pattern most clearly represent? A. High voluntary turnover rates. B. Effective performance management. C. Employee disengagement. D. Successful downsizing outcomes. Correct. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, C. Employee disengagement. Explanation: option C is correct because disengaged workers lack the emotional and motivational connections to their employer that drive discretionary effort, so they do only the minimum required to keep their jobs. Option A is incorrect because the employees described are still working at the organisation and have not left, So this pattern represents low engagement and motivation rather than actual voluntary employee departures. Option B is incorrect because effective performance management would produce clear goals, regular feedback, and motivated employees, which is the opposite of the bare minimum effort and lack of enthusiasm described here. Option D is incorrect because downsizing involves the permanent reduction of employees to improve efficiency, and the scenario describes employees who are still present but emotionally disconnected from their work. A manager notices team members doing the bare minimum. No enthusiasm for company goals. They describe feeling like they have to do the work rather than wanting to. What's the issue? Employee disengagement. Disengaged workers lack the emotional and motivational connections to their employer that drive discretionary effort. They show up, punch the clock, do the minimum, and go home. They're physically present but mentally checked out. High voluntary turnover? These employees haven't left yet. They're still there, just not really there. If they were leaving, that would be turnover. This is the stage before turnover. Effective performance management? That would produce clear goals, regular feedback, and motivated employees. The scenario describes the exact opposite. Successful downsizing outcomes? Downsizing is about permanently reducing headcount for efficiency. These employees are still employed, they're just emotionally disconnected. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When employees do only the minimum, feel obligated rather than motivated, and show no enthusiasm, that's disengagement. The keywords are bare minimum, have to versus want to, and no enthusiasm. Quick recall hook. Minimum effort equals maximum disengagement, doing just enough not to get fired. 27. Research by Gallup found that a large majority of employees worldwide are not engaged at work, yet companies with high engagement significantly outperform those with low engagement. According to research findings, which factor accounts for the largest share of variation in employee engagement scores within organizations? A. Their direct supervisors. B. The company's industry sector. C. The geographic office location. D. The employee benefit package. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer. A. Their direct supervisors. Explanation. Option A is correct because according to Gallup research, at least 70% of the variance in employee engagement scores is driven by supervisors, making them the single most influential factor. Option B is incorrect because while industries may have different average engagement levels, the research specifically identifies supervisors as responsible for the majority of variance in engagement scores within companies. Option C is incorrect because although geographic location may affect some workplace conditions, the research evidence points to the quality of direct supervision rather than office location as the primary engagement driver. Option D is incorrect because benefit packages are a component of total compensation, but do not account for the largest share of variance in engagement. The quality of supervision has a far greater documented influence. Gallup research found that most employees worldwide are disengaged, yet companies with high engagement crush those with low engagement in performance. So what accounts for the biggest chunk of variation in engagement scores? Their direct supervisors. According to Gallup, at least 70% of the variance in employee engagement is driven by supervisors. 70%. Your boss is the engagement variable. The company's industry sector. Industries may differ in average engagement levels, but the research specifically says supervisors drive the majority of variance within companies. Geographic office location might affect some conditions, but the data points squarely at supervisor quality, not zip codes. The employee benefit package? Benefits matter for total compensation, but they don't account for the largest share of engagement variance. Supervision quality dwarfs benefits as an engagement driver. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When a question asks about the biggest factor in engagement, the answer is supervisors. The 70% number is worth remembering. Gallup plus engagement plus variance always equals supervisor quality. Quick recall hook. Boss equals engagement. 70% of the engagement equation is your direct supervisor. 28. An employee frequently cancels social activities due to work, has not taken a vacation in 2 years, no longer pursues hobbies, and constantly checks their phone for work messages even on weekends. Which workplace condition do these behavioural patterns most strongly signal, according to the course material? A. High effective commitment. B. Strong work ethic development. C. Optimal performance engagement. D. Risk of employee burnout. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, D. Risk of employee burnout. Explanation. Option D is correct because frequently cancelling social activities, rarely taking vacations, abandoning hobbies, and constantly checking work communications are specifically identified as warning signs of approaching burnout. Option A is incorrect because effective commitment is a positive emotional attachment to the organisation based on shared values, not an exhausting pattern of overwork that eliminates personal activities and rest. Option B is incorrect because a strong work ethic involves dedication and effort, but the behavioural pattern described goes beyond dedication into territory that signals exhaustion and potential health consequences. Option C is incorrect because optimal engagement involves enthusiasm and passion for work alongside a sustainable lifestyle, not the elimination of personal activities and the inability to disconnect from work responsibilities. An employee frequently cancels social activities for work, hasn't taken a vacation in 2 years, abandoned hobbies, and constantly checks their phone for work messages on weekends. What does this signal? Risk of employee burnout. These are textbook warning signs. The course material specifically identifies cancelling social activities, rarely vacationing, abandoning hobbies, and inability to disconnect from work as signals that burnout is approaching. High effective commitment. Effective commitment is a positive emotional attachment to the organisation based on shared values. It's a good thing. This pattern isn't positive. It's exhausting and unsustainable. Strong work ethic. There's a line between dedication and self-destruction. This crosses it. A strong work ethic involves effort and discipline, but this pattern points toward health consequences, not just hard work. Optimal performance engagement. Real engagement includes enthusiasm alongside a sustainable lifestyle. Eliminating personal life and being unable to disconnect is not optimal. It's a red flag. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When you see cancelling social plans, no vacations, abandoned hobbies, and constant work communication, think burnout. Those 4 behaviours together are the burnout signature in this course. Quick recall, hook. No life outside work equals burnout alert. When work eats everything else, burnout is coming. 29. A hotel chain measures both employee engagement and customer satisfaction at each property. Properties where both scores rank above average dramatically outperform properties where both scores are below average. What does this relationship between employee and customer engagement demonstrate about business performance? A. Customer satisfaction drives all outcomes. B. Engaged employees drive customer engagement. C. Financial results determine engagement levels. D. Engagement surveys are unreliable predictors. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, B. Engaged employees drive customer engagement. Explanation. Option B is correct because research shows that engaged employees help engage customers, and companies scoring above average on both employee and customer engagement dramatically outperform those scoring poorly on both. Option A is incorrect because the relationship described is bidirectional, with employee engagement driving customer satisfaction rather than customer satisfaction operating independently as the sole driver of business outcomes. Option C is incorrect because the evidence suggests that engagement drives financial results rather than the reverse, with engaged employees creating positive customer experiences that then produce stronger financial performance outcomes. Option D is incorrect because the research specifically demonstrates that engagement scores are meaningful predictors of business performance, with dramatic performance differences between high engagement and low engagement properties documented consistently. A hotel chain tracks employee engagement and customer satisfaction at every property. Where both scores rank above average, performance is dramatically better than where both are below average. What does this show? Engaged employees drive customer engagement. Research demonstrates that when employees are engaged, they create positive customer experiences, which drives business performance. The relationship flows from employee engagement to customer engagement to financial results. Customer satisfaction doesn't drive all outcomes by itself. The relationship starts with employees. Employee engagement comes first, customer engagement follows. Financial results determine engagement. The evidence runs the other direction. Engagement drives financial results, not the reverse. Engagement surveys are unreliable? This research proves exactly the opposite. Engagement scores predict performance differences dramatically, and those differences show up consistently across properties. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When a question links employee engagement to customer satisfaction to business performance, the answer follows the chain. Engaged employees lead to engaged customers, lead to better financial performance. The flow is always employees first. Quick recall hook. Happy employees make happy customers, make happy profits. The engagement chain. 30. A company wants to improve employee engagement across all departments. According to research, which of the following approaches would be most effective at giving employees a reason to contribute their full effort and feel passionate about their daily work? A. Reducing employee salaries temporarily. B. Eliminating all performance reviews. C. Letting employees use their talents daily. D. Increasing office surveillance systems. Do you know the answer? Correct answer: C. Letting employees use their talents daily. Explanation: Option C is correct because letting employees use their talents is specifically identified as one of the best ways to enhance employee engagement, giving workers a sense of purpose and contribution. Option A is incorrect because reducing salaries would likely decrease employee morale and satisfaction, working against engagement rather than building the emotional connection and enthusiasm that drives discretionary effort. Option B is incorrect because eliminating performance reviews would remove the goal setting and feedback processes that help employees understand expectations and see how their work contributes to organizational success. Option D is incorrect because increasing surveillance communicates distrust and would likely decrease employee engagement rather than building the supportive and respectful environment that promotes genuine enthusiasm for work. A company wants to improve engagement across all departments. According to research, which approach gives employees a reason to bring their full effort and feel passionate about daily work? Letting employees use their talents daily. This is specifically identified in the course material as one of the best ways to build engagement. When people get to do what they're good at every day, they feel purposeful and connected to their work. Reducing salaries? That would crush morale and satisfaction. You'd be actively working against engagement, not building it. Eliminating performance reviews? Reviews provide the goals and feedback that help employees understand expectations and see their contribution. Removing them takes away a key engagement structure. Increasing surveillance? That communicates distrust. Nothing destroys engagement faster than feeling like your employer is watching your every move instead of trusting you. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. When a question asks what improves engagement most, and one of the options is about using talents or strengths daily, pick it. The course material calls this out specifically. Quick recall hook. Use your strengths equals stay engaged. People who do what they're good at want to keep doing it. 31. A software company's lowest performing programmer resigns to pursue a different career path. The team's productivity actually improves because the replacement hire brings stronger skills and better collaboration habits. Which specific type of turnover does this departure represent? A. Dysfunctional turnover. B. Unavoidable turnover. C. Involuntary turnover. D. Functional turnover. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, D. Functional turnover. Explanation: option D is correct because functional turnover is specifically defined as the departure of poor performers, which can benefit the organisation by creating opportunities to hire more capable and productive replacement employees. Option A is incorrect because dysfunctional turnover is the departure of effective performers the company would have liked to retain, and this scenario involves a low-performing employee whose departure actually improved outcomes. Option B is incorrect because unavoidable turnover involves departures that the employer could not have prevented regardless of actions taken, such as serious illness or spouse relocation, not a performance-related career change. Option C is incorrect because involuntary turnover occurs when the employer asks the employee to leave due to poor performance or restructuring, but in this scenario the programmer voluntarily chose to resign. A software company's worst performing programmer quits to pursue a different career. The team actually gets more productive because the replacement hire is better. What type of turnover is this? Functional turnover. Functional turnover means a poor performer leaves and it benefits the organisation. The departure opens a slot for someone more capable, and the team improves. That's functional. The turnover served a positive function. Dysfunctional turnover is the opposite. That's when a good performer leaves and the company suffers. This programmer was the lowest performer, not a star. Unavoidable turnover means the company couldn't have prevented it, regardless of what they did, like a spouse relocating or a serious illness. A career change by a low performer doesn't fit that category. Involuntary turnover means the employer made the decision to let someone go. This programmer resigned voluntarily. Nobody fired them. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. Functional turnover means the departure helped the company. Dysfunctional turnover means it hurt. If a poor performer leaves and things improve, that's functional. If a top performer leaves and things worsen, that's dysfunctional. Quick recall hook. Functional equals good riddance. When a bad performer leaves and the team gets better. 32. An experienced sales manager who consistently exceeds targets and mentors junior staff leaves the company because a competitor offered significantly better compensation and career advancement. Which type of turnover should concern this employer the most? A. Functional voluntary turnover. B. Unavoidable involuntary turnover. C. Dysfunctional avoidable turnover. D. Involuntary functional turnover. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, C. Dysfunctional avoidable turnover. Explanation. Option C is correct, because dysfunctional turnover involves the loss of effective performers the company wanted to keep. An avoidable turnover could have been prevented by addressing the compensation and advancement concerns. Option A is incorrect because functional turnover involves the departure of poor performers who benefit the organisation by leaving, and this scenario describes the loss of a top-performing sales manager. Option B is incorrect because the turnover was voluntary since the employee chose to leave, and it was avoidable since better compensation and advancement opportunities could have retained this high-performing employee. Option D is incorrect because involuntary turnover occurs when the employer asks the employee to leave, but this employee chose to leave voluntarily for a better opportunity at a competing organisation. An experienced sales manager who crushes targets and mentors junior staff leaves because a competitor offered better compensation and career advancement. Which type of turnover should worry this employer the most? Dysfunctional, avoidable turnover. Let's break that down. Dysfunctional means an effective performer left, someone the company wanted to keep. Avoidable means the company could have prevented it by addressing the compensation and advancement gap before the competitor swooped in. That's the worst combination for an employer. Functional voluntary turnover. Functional means a poor performer leaves and benefits the organization. This person was a top performer. Losing them hurts. Unavoidable involuntary. Two problems. The employee left voluntarily, nobody forced them out. And it was avoidable. Better pay and advancement could have kept them. Involuntary functional turnover. Involuntary means the employer initiated the departure. The employee chose to leave on their own, and again they were a top performer, not someone the company wanted gone. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When a question shows a high performer leaving for a competitor because of fixable issues like pay or advancement, that's dysfunctional plus avoidable. Ask two questions. Was the loss bad for the company? If yes, dysfunctional. Could they have prevented it? If yes, avoidable. Quick recall hook. Star leaves for fixable reason equals dysfunctional avoidable, the most painful type of turnover. 33. A restaurant chain discovers that losing a top-performing server costs roughly $2,500. Losing an average performer costs $1,000 and losing a bottom performer actually saves the company $500. What does this analysis demonstrate about how organizations should approach employee turnover management? A. Not all turnover has equal value. B. All turnover should be minimized equally. C. Only involuntary turnover matters. D. Turnover costs are always negative. Do you know the answer? Correct answer. A. Not all turnover has equal value. Explanation. Option A is correct, because this analysis shows that the financial impact of turnover varies depending on employee performance level, meaning companies should focus retention efforts on top performers rather than treating all turnover equally. Option B is incorrect because the data clearly demonstrates that the departure of bottom performers actually benefits the company financially, so attempting to minimize all turnover equally would waste retention resources on employees whose departure helps. Option C is incorrect because the scenario involves voluntary departures at all performance levels with different financial impacts, demonstrating that the type and value of turnover matters regardless of whether it is voluntary or involuntary. Option D is incorrect because the analysis proves that some turnover produces a positive financial outcome, specifically when bottom performers leave and the company saves money, contradicting the assumption that turnover is always costly. A restaurant chain runs the numbers. Losing a top server costs $2,500, losing an average performer costs $1,000, and losing a bottom performer actually saves $500. What does this tell us? Not all turnover has equal value. The financial impact of turnover depends on who's leaving. Top performer departures are expensive. Average performer departures cost less. Bottom performer departures can actually be a net positive. This means companies should target retention efforts at their best people, not treat all turnover the same. Should all turnover be minimized equally? The data says no. Spending retention dollars on bottom performers whose departure saves you money is a waste of resources. Only involuntary turnover matters? The scenario involves voluntary departures at every performance level, with different financial impacts. The type of turnover that matters depends on who's leaving, not how they left. Turnover costs are always negative. The bottom performer data disproves that directly. Some turnover produces positive financial outcomes. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When a question shows different costs for losing different performers, the answer is that turnover value varies by performance level. Focus retention on top performers. Quick recall hook. Not all exits are equal. Losing a star hurts, losing a dud helps. 34. A company loses an employee because their spouse received a job transfer to another state. requiring the family to relocate. The employer had offered competitive pay, excellent benefits, and a supportive work environment. Which classification best describes this specific type of employee departure? A. Avoidable involuntary turnover. B. Functional involuntary turnover. C. Dysfunctional avoidable turnover. D. Unavoidable voluntary turnover. Do you know the answer? Correct answer. D. Unavoidable voluntary turnover. Explanation. Option D is correct because the employee voluntarily chose to leave, and the departure could not have been prevented by the employer since it resulted from family circumstances entirely outside the organisation's control. Option A is incorrect because involuntary turnover involves the employer asking the employee to leave, which did not happen here. The employee made a voluntary decision to resign based on family needs. Option B is incorrect because the turnover is voluntary, since the employee chose to leave, and functional turnover involves poor performers whose departure benefits the organisation, not a valued employee lost to relocation. Option C is incorrect because avoidable turnover is turnover the employer could have prevented by addressing its cause, but a spouse's job relocation is a personal circumstance beyond the employer's ability to influence. An employee's spouse gets a job transfer to another state. The family has to relocate. The employer offered competitive pay, great benefits, and a supportive environment. Did everything right, but the employee still has to leave. What's the classification? Unavoidable voluntary turnover. Voluntary because the employee chose to resign. Nobody fired them. Unavoidable because the employer couldn't have prevented it. A spouse's job relocation is a personal circumstance entirely outside the company's control. No amount of pay, benefits, or culture could change this outcome. Avoidable involuntary? Involuntary means the employer initiates the departure. That didn't happen here. Functional involuntary? Again, the employee left voluntarily. And functional means a poor performer whose departure helps. Nothing suggests this person was a bad employee. Dysfunctional avoidable? Avoidable means the company could have prevented it by fixing something. A spouse's relocation is beyond any employer's ability to fix. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When someone leaves for reasons completely outside the employer's control, spouse relocation, serious illness, family emergency, that's unavoidable. Then check if they quit or were fired. Quit equals voluntary. So spouse relocation equals unavoidable voluntary. Quick recall hook, can't fix it equals unavoidable. If the employer had zero ability to prevent it, it's unavoidable. 35. Most employee turnover occurs during the first few months on the job, making new hire retention especially costly and problematic for organisations. According to the course material, what is the most effective way to reduce this early turnover and help new employees adjust successfully to the company? A. Offering higher starting salaries only. B. Eliminating all probationary periods. C. Effective onboarding and early support. D. Assigning new hires to remote work. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, C. Effective onboarding and early support. Explanation. Option C is correct because helping new employees adjust to the company and their job early on is identified as the most effective approach to increasing retention during the critical first months of employment. Option A is incorrect because while competitive pay helps attract talent, pay level and satisfaction are relatively weak predictors of individual turnover decisions compared to factors like supervision quality and job satisfaction. Option B is incorrect because eliminating probationary periods does not address the underlying adjustment challenges new employees face and would remove a useful evaluation period for both the employer and the employee. Option D is incorrect because assigning all new hires to remote work could actually increase early turnover by reducing their ability to build relationships, receive in-person guidance, and adjust to the company culture. Most turnover happens in the first few months on the job. New hire retention is expensive when it fails. What's the most effective way to reduce early turnover? Effective onboarding and early support. Helping new employees adjust to the company and their role early on is the course material's answer for reducing that critical first month's attrition. Good onboarding sets expectations, builds connections, and gives new hires the foundation they need. Higher starting salaries only. Pay matters for attraction, but research shows pay level and pay satisfaction are relatively weak predictors of individual turnover decisions. Money alone won't keep someone who feels lost and unsupported. Eliminating probationary periods? That doesn't fix the adjustment challenges new hires face. You just remove a useful evaluation window for both sides without addressing the real problem. Remote work for all new hires? That could actually make things worse. It's harder to build relationships, get in-person guidance, and absorb company culture through a screen during your first weeks. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. Early turnover questions always point to onboarding. When you see first few months, new hire retention, or early adjustment, the answer involves onboarding and early support. Quick recall hook. First months equal onboarding. The early days make or break retention. 36. An employee at an animal shelter stays with the organisation because she deeply believes in its mission of finding homes for all pets and strongly identifies with the organisation's values and purpose. Which type of organisational commitment does this employee most clearly demonstrate? A. Continuance commitment. B. Normative commitment. C. Extrinsic commitment. D. Effective commitment. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, D. Effective commitment. Explanation. Option D is correct because affective commitment involves a positive emotional attachment to the organisation and strong identification with its values and goals, where employees stay because they genuinely want to. Option A is incorrect because continuance commitment occurs when employees stay because they perceive the economic or social costs of leaving would be too high, not because of emotional attachment to the organisation's mission. Option B is incorrect because normative commitment involves staying because employees feel a moral or ethical obligation to remain, not because they have a strong emotional bond with the organisation's values and purpose. Option C is incorrect because extrinsic commitment is not one of the three recognised types of organisational commitment described in the course material, which identifies effective, normative, and continuance commitment only. An employee at an animal shelter stays because she deeply believes in the mission, finding homes for all pets. She identifies strongly with the organisation's values and purpose. What commitment type is this? Effective commitment. Effective commitment is a positive emotional attachment to the organisation. The employee stays because she genuinely wants to. She shares the values, she believes in the mission, she feels connected. It's the heart-based commitment. Continuance commitment is different. That's when people stay because leaving would cost them too much. Stock options vesting, losing friendships, giving up seniority. This employee isn't thinking about costs. She's staying because of love for the mission. Normative commitment means staying out of moral obligation, feeling like you owe the company. There's no sense of obligation here. She's not staying because she should. She's staying because she wants to. Extrinsic commitment? Not a real thing. The three recognised types are effective, normative, and continuance. Anything else is a trap answer. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. Effective equals emotional attachment and shared values. Want to stay. Continuance equals cost of leaving. Have to stay. Normative equals moral obligation. Should stay. When the scenario shows someone who loves the mission, it's effective. Quick recall hook. Effective equals affection. They stay because they love it. 37. An employee recently received expensive surgery paid for by the company's health plan and was given generous paid leave during recovery. The employee now feels a moral obligation to stay with the company for several years to repay this debt of gratitude. Which type of commitment explains this feeling? A. Normative commitment. B. Effective commitment. C. Continuance commitment. D. Strategic commitment. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A. Normative commitment. Explanation: option A is correct, because normative commitment occurs when employees feel they should stay with an organisation for moral or ethical reasons, such as repaying a perceived debt of gratitude for benefits received. Option B is incorrect because affective commitment is based on a positive emotional attachment to the organisation's values and goals, not on a sense of moral obligation or duty to repay the employer for past support. Option C is incorrect because continuance commitment is based on the perceived economic or social costs of leaving, such as losing stock options or friendships, not on a moral sense of obligation or gratitude. Option D is incorrect because strategic commitment is not one of the three recognised types of organisational commitment in the course material, which specifically describes affective, normative, and continuance commitment. An employee gets expensive surgery paid by the company's health plan and generous paid leave during recovery. Now they feel a moral obligation to stay for several years to repay that debt of gratitude. Which commitment type explains this? Normative commitment. Normative commitment kicks in when employees feel they should stay for moral or ethical reasons, like repaying a perceived debt. The company took care of them when it mattered most, and now they feel they owe loyalty in return. That's a sense of duty, not desire. Effective commitment is emotional attachment based on shared values and love for the organisation. The driver here isn't, I love this place. It's, I owe this place. Different motivation entirely. Continuance commitment is based on the perceived cost of leaving. Losing stock options, friendships, seniority. The employee isn't calculating costs. They're feeling a moral obligation. That's normative territory. Strategic commitment, not one of the three recognised types. The framework covers effective, normative, and continuance only. Anything else is a distractor. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When the scenario describes an employee who feels they owe the company, feels a debt of gratitude, or stays out of moral obligation, that's normative. The keywords are should, obligation, debt, and gratitude. Quick recall hook. Normative equals I owe you. They stay because they feel indebted. 38. An employee dislikes her job and does not share the company's values, but stays because she would lose valuable stock options that vest in 2 years, and her close friendships with co-workers would be difficult to replace elsewhere. Which type of commitment is keeping this employee at the organisation? A. Effective commitment. B. Normative commitment. C. Functional commitment. D. Continuance commitment. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, D. Continuance commitment. Explanation. Option D is correct, because continuance commitment occurs when employees stay because they perceive the economic costs of losing stock options and the social costs of losing co-worker friendships would be too high. Option A is incorrect because effective commitment requires positive emotional attachment and identification with organisational values, yet this employee explicitly dislikes her job and does not share the company's values. Option B is incorrect because normative commitment involves staying out of moral or ethical obligation, but this employee stays because of tangible financial and social costs, not because she feels she ought to stay. Option C is incorrect because functional commitment is not one of the three recognised types of organisational commitment in the course material. The three types are effective, normative, and continuance commitment. An employee dislikes her job and doesn't share the company's values, but she stays because she'd lose valuable stock options that vest in 2 years, and her close co-worker friendships would be hard to replace elsewhere. What's keeping her there? Continuance commitment. Continuance commitment means staying because the perceived costs of leaving, both economic and social, are too high. Stock options vesting is an economic cost. Losing close friendships is a social cost. She's not staying because she loves the place. She's staying because leaving would hurt her wallet and her social life. Effective commitment requires positive emotional attachment and shared values. This employee explicitly dislikes the job and rejects the company's values. That's the opposite of effective. Normative commitment means staying out of moral obligation. She doesn't feel she owes the company anything. She's trapped by costs, not duty. Functional commitment? Another fake type. The 3 real ones are effective, normative, and continuance. If you see anything else, it's a distractor. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. When someone stays despite disliking their job because of what they'd lose by leaving, money, benefits, relationships, that's continuance. The person is calculating costs, not feeling emotions or obligations. Quick recall hook. Continuance equals can't afford to leave. Golden handcuffs keep them locked in. 39. A newly hired manager learns that employees can simultaneously experience different levels of all 3 commitment types, and that each employee has a unique commitment profile at any given time. Why is understanding individual commitment profiles important for managing employee behavior effectively? A. All 3 types produce identical outcomes. B. Commitment profiles never change over time. C. Different profiles predict different work behaviors. D. Only one type of commitment matters at work. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer. C. Different profiles predict different work behaviors. Explanation: Option C is correct because different commitment profiles, reflecting varying levels of affective, normative, and continuance commitment, produce different effects on job performance, absenteeism, and likelihood of quitting. Option A is incorrect because the 3 types of commitment lead to different workplace behaviors and outcomes, with effective commitment generally producing the strongest positive effects on performance and retention. Option B is incorrect because commitment profiles change over time as employees' experiences, perceptions, and circumstances evolve, meaning that a manager must continuously attend to factors influencing each type of commitment. Option D is incorrect because all 3 types of commitment influence employee behavior in different ways, and understanding the full profile gives managers better insight into why employees stay and how they perform. A new manager learns that employees can experience different levels of all 3 commitment types simultaneously, and every person has a unique commitment profile at any given time. Why does this matter? Because different profiles predict different work behaviors. An employee high in effective commitment will perform differently from one high in continuance commitment. The mix of all 3 types, and how strong each one is for a given person, affects job performance, absenteeism, and likelihood of quitting in different ways. All 3 types produce identical outcomes? They don't. Effective commitment generally produces the strongest positive effects on performance and retention. Continuance commitment can keep someone present, but not necessarily productive. Commitment profiles never change? Wrong. They shift as experiences, perceptions, and circumstances evolve. A manager has to continuously pay attention to what's influencing each type. Only one type matters. All 3 influence behavior differently. Understanding the full profile gives managers better insight into why people stay and how they perform. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. When a question asks why commitment profiles matter, the answer is that different combinations predict different behaviors. The practical implication is that managers need to understand the whole picture, not just one type. Quick recall hook: 3 types, different outcomes. The mix matters more than any single type. 40. An organization with poor corporate ethical values notices that employees seem emotionally detached and show little identification with the company's goals. Many express that they stay only because alternative jobs are scarce. Which relationship between organizational ethics and commitment does this situation most clearly illustrate? A. Weak ethics reduce affective commitment. B. Ethics have no effect on commitment. C. Poor ethics increase normative commitment. D. Weak ethics strengthen continuance commitment. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer: A. Weak ethics reduce effective commitment. Explanation: Option A is correct because employees do not connect or identify as strongly with employers that have poor ethical values, resulting in lower emotional attachment and weaker effective commitment to the organization. Option B is incorrect because the course material specifically states that employees who perceive poor corporate ethical values have lower commitment to the employer, demonstrating a clear connection between ethics and commitment. Option C is incorrect because poor ethics would weaken rather than strengthen normative commitment, since employees feel less moral obligation to stay with organizations whose ethical standards they do not respect or admire. Option D is incorrect because continuance commitment is driven by perceived costs of leaving, such as lost benefits or relationships, not by the organization's ethical standards, although weak ethics may push employees to leave once alternatives appear. An organization with poor ethical values notices employees are emotionally detached, don't identify with company goals, and only stick around because alternative jobs are scarce. What relationship between ethics and commitment does this show? Weak ethics reduce affective commitment. When a company has poor ethical values, employees don't connect with it emotionally. They can't identify with an organization whose values they don't respect. So affective commitment, the positive emotional bond, drops. The employees in this scenario are staying only because jobs are scarce, which is continuance commitment filling the gap left by missing effective commitment. Ethics have no effect on commitment. The course material directly contradicts this. Employees who perceive poor ethical values have lower commitment to the employer. The connection is documented. Poor ethics increase normative commitment? That's backwards. Employees feel less moral obligation to organizations they don't respect ethically, not more. Weak ethics strengthen continuance commitment. Continuance commitment is driven by cost of leaving calculations, benefits, relationships, job scarcity. Ethics don't strengthen continuance, they weaken effective. The employees are staying despite weak ethics, not because of them. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. Ethics and effective commitment are linked. Poor ethics reduce the emotional bond employees feel. When you see poor ethics plus emotionally detached plus don't identify with goals, the answer connects weak ethics to low effective commitment. Quick recall hook: bad ethics equal broken hearts. Poor values destroy the emotional connection. 41. During interviews, a company describes both the exciting and the challenging aspects of the role, including occasional weekend travel and tight project deadlines. After hiring, new employees report that the job matched their expectations. Which retention practice does this honest recruiting approach represent? A. Progressive discipline implementation. B. Mobility barrier creation. C. Workforce redeployment planning. D. Realistic job preview. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer: D. Realistic job preview. Explanation: Option D is correct because realistic job previews communicate both positive and potentially undesirable aspects of the job during recruiting, which builds trust and reduces turnover by helping expectations match reality. Option A is incorrect because progressive discipline is a structured process for addressing poor performance through verbal warnings, written warnings, and suspension, not a recruiting practice for setting accurate job expectations. Option B is incorrect because mobility barriers are factors like vesting stock options or firm-specific knowledge that make it harder for employees to leave, not an honest communication practice used during the hiring process. Option C is incorrect because workforce redeployment involves moving existing employees to other positions or company divisions to match talent with organizational needs, not communicating job realities to potential new hires. During interviews, a company tells candidates about both the exciting parts and the tough parts of the role. Weekend travel, tight deadlines, the whole picture. After hiring, new employees say the job matched what they were told. What retention practice is this? A realistic job preview. Realistic job previews communicate both the positives and the negatives of a job during recruiting. You're not sugarcoating anything. You're telling people exactly what they're signing up for. The result? Trust. And when expectations match reality, people stick around longer because there are no unpleasant surprises. Progressive discipline is a structured process for dealing with poor performance. Verbal warnings, written warnings, suspension. That's a correction tool, not a recruiting practice. Mobility barriers are things like vesting stock options or firm-specific skills that make it expensive to leave. That's about trapping people with golden handcuffs, not about honest communication during hiring. Workforce redeployment is moving existing employees to different positions within the company. That's an internal staffing move, not a recruiting conversation with candidates. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. When a question describes honesty during recruiting, sharing both good and bad aspects of the job, the answer is realistic job preview. The keywords are both positive and negative, honest, and expectations matched reality. Quick recall hook. RJP equals real talk before the job. Tell them the truth up front. Keep them longer. 42. A technology company trains employees extensively in proprietary processes unique to the organization, offers stock options that vest over 4 years, and builds strong internal teams with deep personal relationships. Which specific retention strategy ties these three practices together under a single concept? A. Realistic job previews. B. Flexible work arrangements. C. Creating mobility barriers. D. Quality supervision programs. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, C. Creating mobility barriers. Explanation: Option C is correct because mobility barriers are factors like vesting stock options, firm-specific training, and desirable work relationships that make an employee's value greater inside the company than outside, discouraging departure. Option A is incorrect because realistic job previews are an honest recruiting practice that communicates both positive and negative aspects of a job before hiring, not a post-hire strategy to make leaving more costly for employees. Option B is incorrect because flexible work arrangements involve options like telecommuting and compressed work weeks that help employees balance work and life, not mechanisms designed to increase the cost of leaving the company. Option D is incorrect because quality supervision programs focus on hiring and developing better managers to improve the employee experience, not on creating specific financial and social barriers that make departure more difficult. A tech company trains employees in proprietary processes unique to the organization, offers stock options that vest over 4 years, and builds strong teams with deep personal relationships. What single retention concept ties all three together? Creating mobility barriers. Mobility barriers are factors that make an employee's value greater inside the company than outside it, making departure more costly. Proprietary training means your skills are worth more here than anywhere else. Vesting stock options mean walking away costs you real money. Deep team relationships mean leaving costs you friendships you can't replicate. All three increase the price of the exit door. Realistic job previews happen during recruiting. They're about honest communication before someone is hired. These practices are all post-hire retention strategies. Flexible work arrangements help with work-life balance. Telecommuting, compressed weeks. They make life easier, but they don't specifically increase the cost of leaving the way these three practices do. Quality supervision programs focus on developing better managers. That's about the boss-employee relationship, not about building financial and social walls that discourage departure. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When you see firm-specific training, vesting stock options, or deep workplace relationships described together, that's mobility barriers. All three increase the cost of leaving. Quick recall hook. Mobility barriers equal golden handcuffs. The more you'd lose by leaving, the harder it is to go. 43. A company offers generous health insurance and retirement benefits, but communicates them poorly to employees. A competitor offers slightly less valuable benefits, but explains them clearly and frequently. Research suggests the competitor likely experiences lower turnover among top performers. What does this finding reveal about retention? A. Benefits do not affect retention at all. B. Communication of benefits matters more than value alone. C. Only salary affects employee retention. D. Top performers never consider benefits. Do you know the answer? Correct answer. B. Communication of benefits matters more than value alone. Explanation. Option B is correct because research found that companies with less costly benefits but effective communication had lower top talent turnover than companies with richer benefits but poor communication practices. Option A is incorrect because benefits do influence retention, but their impact depends on whether employees understand, value, and appreciate them. Poorly communicated benefits fail to influence employee attitudes or departure decisions. Option C is incorrect because research shows that pay level and pay satisfaction are relatively weak predictors of individual turnover decisions, and multiple factors, including supervision quality and job design, influence retention more strongly. Option D is incorrect because top performers do consider benefits when making employment decisions, but their retention is more strongly influenced by whether they understand and appreciate those benefits than by the raw benefit value. Company A has generous health insurance and retirement benefits, but communicates them poorly. Company B has slightly less valuable benefits, but explains them clearly and often. Research says Company B likely has lower turnover among top performers. What's the lesson? Communication of benefits matters more than value alone. You can offer the richest benefits package in the industry, but if employees don't understand or appreciate what they have, those benefits don't influence their decision to stay. The company that communicates effectively wins the retention game, even with less expensive benefits. Benefits don't affect retention at all. Wrong, they absolutely do, but only when employees understand and value them. Poorly communicated benefits are invisible benefits. Only salary affects retention. Research shows pay level and pay satisfaction are actually relatively weak predictors of individual turnover decisions. Supervision quality and job design influence retention more. Top performers never consider benefits? They absolutely do. But their retention depends more on whether they understand and appreciate those benefits than on the raw dollar value of the package. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When a question compares rich but poorly communicated benefits against lesser but well-communicated benefits, communication wins. The principle is that employees can't value what they don't understand. Quick recall hook. Communication beats value. It's not what you offer, it's whether people know what they have. 44. A semiconductor company includes employee retention as a formal component of managers' performance reviews and rewards managers who successfully keep their best engineers engaged and challenged. Which retention strategy does this practice most directly represent? A. Creating mobility barriers. B. Offering flexible work schedules. C. Providing realistic job previews. D. Creating accountability for retention. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, D, creating accountability for retention. Explanation. Option D is correct because holding managers accountable for retaining top performers and including retention in their performance reviews directly creates managerial responsibility and motivation for keeping valued employees engaged. Option A is incorrect because mobility barriers involve stock options, firm-specific training, or other factors that increase the cost of leaving, not evaluating managers on their ability to keep talented employees satisfied and engaged. Option B is incorrect because flexible work schedules involve options like telecommuting and compressed work weeks that help employees balance personal demands, not a system for holding managers responsible for retention outcomes. Option C is incorrect because realistic job previews happen during the recruiting process by honestly communicating job expectations, not during ongoing employment through managerial performance evaluations and accountability systems. A semiconductor company puts employee retention into managers' performance reviews. Managers who keep their best engineers engaged and challenged get rewarded for it. What retention strategy is this? Creating accountability for retention. When you include retention in a manager's performance evaluation, you make it their job to keep good people. It's no longer just HR's problem. Managers now have personal motivation. Their own reviews and rewards depend on it, to keep valued employees satisfied and challenged. Mobility barriers involve stock options, firm-specific training, or other factors that raise the cost of departure for employees. This question is about evaluating managers, not about making it expensive for employees to leave. Flexible work schedules are about telecommuting and compressed work weeks, helping people balance personal demands. That's a work-life tool, not a system for holding managers responsible. Realistic job previews happen during recruiting. This question describes an ongoing employment practice in performance management, not a pre-hire communication strategy. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. When a question describes retention being built into manager evaluations or rewards, the answer is accountability for retention. The company is making managers own the outcome. Quick recall hook. Manager's review includes retention equals accountability. When keeping people is part of the boss's grade, it gets done. 45. One of the strongest and most consistent predictors of whether an employee will stay or leave is the quality of their relationship with their direct supervisor. Given this research finding, which single retention strategy would likely produce the greatest improvement in employee retention across all departments of an organization? A. Hiring and developing better managers. B. Increasing office surveillance measures. C. Eliminating all remote work options. D. Doubling the annual bonus structure. Do you know the answer? Correct answer. A. Hiring and developing better managers. Explanation. Option A is correct because supervisors have a considerable impact on subordinates' turnover, and creating a climate of respect, fairness, and trust through better management directly addresses the strongest predictor of retention. Option B is incorrect because increasing surveillance would likely erode trust and reduce engagement, worsening the supervisor-employee relationship rather than strengthening the respectful and supportive climate that promotes employee retention. Option C is incorrect because eliminating remote work would reduce flexibility, a key retention factor, and would not address the fundamental quality of the supervisor-employee relationship that most strongly predicts whether employees stay. Option D is incorrect because research consistently shows that pay level and satisfaction are relatively weak predictors of individual turnover decisions compared to management quality, supervision, and work relationships. Research consistently shows that one of the strongest predictors of whether an employee stays or leaves is the quality of their relationship with their direct supervisor. Given that finding, which single strategy would produce the greatest retention improvement across the whole organization? Hiring and developing better managers. If supervisors are the number one driver of retention, then fixing the supervisor problem fixes the retention problem. Better managers create climates of respect, fairness, and trust. That directly addresses the root cause. Increasing office surveillance, that would erode trust and reduce engagement. The exact opposite of what you need. You'd be making the supervisor-employee relationship worse, not better. Eliminating all remote work, that kills flexibility, which is a significant retention factor on its own. And it still doesn't address the core issue: supervisor quality. Doubling the annual bonus? Research consistently shows that pay level and pay satisfaction are relatively weak predictors of individual turnover compared to management quality and work relationships. You can double the bonus and still lose people to bad bosses. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. When a question connects supervisor quality to retention and asks for the best single strategy, the answer is better managers. Supervisors are the strongest retention lever. Everything else is secondary. Quick recall hook: fix the boss, fix the turnover. The manager is the retention switch. 46. During contract negotiations between a union and management, both sides reach a point where neither will change its position on wages. A neutral third party is brought in to help restart communication and suggest possible solutions, but cannot force either side to accept any specific agreement terms. Which dispute resolution method is being used? A. Arbitration. B. A lockout. C. Mediation. D. A secondary boycott. Do you know the answer? Correct answer: C. Mediation. Explanation: option C is correct because mediation uses a neutral third party to facilitate communication and suggest solutions, but the mediator cannot impose a settlement on either party and can only help restart productive dialogue. Option A is incorrect because arbitration involves an impartial third party who acts as both judge and jury and imposes a binding decision on both parties, which is fundamentally different from the non-binding facilitation described here. Option B is incorrect because a lockout is a management strategy where employees are kept away from the workplace and do not get paid, used to pressure the union rather than to facilitate constructive dialogue. Option D is incorrect because a secondary boycott involves a union encouraging third parties, like customers and suppliers, to stop doing business with the company, which was made illegal by the Taft-Hartley Act. Union and management are stuck. Neither side will budge on wages. A neutral third party comes in to help restart communication and suggest possible solutions, but cannot force either side to accept anything. What dispute resolution method is this? Mediation. A mediator facilitates dialogue and suggests solutions but has zero power to impose the decision. Both sides have to agree voluntarily. The mediator is a conversation coach, not a judge. Arbitration is fundamentally different. An arbitrator acts as both judge and jury and imposes a binding decision that both sides must accept. The key distinction is binding versus non-binding. Mediation is non-binding. Arbitration is binding. A lockout is a management weapon where employees are physically kept from the workplace and don't get paid. It's a pressure tactic, not a facilitated conversation. A secondary boycott is when a union pressures third parties, customers, suppliers, to stop doing business with the company. The Taft-Hartley Act made that illegal. It has nothing to do with a neutral third party helping two sides talk. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. Mediation equals suggest but can't force. Arbitration equals judge who imposes a decision. If the third party suggests or facilitates, it's mediation. If the third party decides or imposes, it's arbitration. Quick recall hook. Mediation equals maybe, arbitration equals absolute. The mediator suggests, the arbitrator decides. 47. A union and management are in a dispute over an orange. Each side says it wants the entire orange. A mediator splits it in half. Later, it is discovered that one side only wanted the peel for baking, while the other wanted the fruit to eat. Which negotiation principle does this classic scenario illustrate was violated? A. Insist on objective criteria. B. Create options for mutual gain. C. Separate people from the problem. D. Focus on interests, not positions. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer. D. Focus on interests, not positions. Explanation. Option D is correct because the mediator addressed stated positions of wanting the whole orange, rather than understanding each party's underlying interests, missing a solution where both sides could have gotten everything they needed. Option A is incorrect because insisting on objective criteria involves using outside fairness standards to evaluate proposals, and the failure in this scenario was about not uncovering the different reasons each party actually wanted the orange. Option B is incorrect because while creating mutual gain options was also missed, the root cause was the failure to understand underlying interests first. You cannot create mutual gain solutions without knowing what each side truly needs. Option C is incorrect because separating people from the problem involves addressing emotions and relationship issues separately from substantive issues, and this scenario's failure was about mistaking surface positions for actual underlying interests. The classic orange story. A union and management both say they want the whole orange. A mediator splits it in half. Later turns out one side only wanted the peel for baking, and the other wanted the fruit to eat. Both could have gotten everything they needed. Which negotiation principle was violated? Focus on interests, not positions. The positions were identical. Both sides said, "I want the whole orange," but the interests were completely different. One needed peel, the other needed fruit. The mediator addressed the surface positions without digging into the underlying interests. If they had asked, "Why do you want the orange?" both sides would have walked away with 100% of what they actually needed. Insist on objective criteria means using outside fairness standards to evaluate proposals. The failure here wasn't about fair standards, it was about not understanding what each side truly wanted. Create options for mutual gain was also missed, but it's a downstream problem. You can't create win-win options without first understanding what each side actually needs. The root cause was the failure to identify interests. Separate people from the problem means handling emotions and relationships apart from the substance. This scenario wasn't about emotions. It was about mistaking positions for interests. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. When a question shows two sides stating demands without anyone asking why, the answer is focus on interests, not positions. Positions are what people say they want. Interests are why they want it. Quick recall hook. Position equals what? Interest equals why. Always ask why. 48. Union members refuse to work during a contract negotiation over wages and benefits, hoping that lost revenue will pressure management into accepting their demands. The company is thriving and has not built up product inventories. Which union strategy is being used and why are conditions favourable for its success? A. A recognition strike in slow conditions. B. An economic strike in favourable conditions. C. An unfair labour practice strike. D. A jurisdictional dispute action. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer. B. An economic strike in favourable conditions. Explanation. Option B is correct because economic strikes are disputes over wages or benefits during contract negotiations, and a thriving company with low inventory faces maximum revenue loss pressure, making conditions favourable for the union. Option A is incorrect because recognition strikes are intended to force employers to recognise unions as bargaining representatives, not to resolve wage and benefit disputes during an existing contract negotiation process. Option C is incorrect because unfair labour practice strikes protest illegal employer activities rather than economic issues like wages and benefits, and the scenario describes a standard contract negotiation dispute without mentioning employer misconduct. Option D is incorrect because jurisdictional disputes involve conflicts over which union or group of workers should be assigned to specific job tasks, not disagreements over wages and benefits during contract negotiations. Union members refuse to work during contract negotiations over wages and benefits, hoping lost revenue pressures management. The company is thriving and hasn't stockpiled inventory. Which strategy is being used, and why are conditions favourable? An economic strike in favourable conditions. Let's unpack both parts. Economic strike. The dispute is over wages and benefits during contract negotiations. That's an economic issue, not a legal complaint about employer misconduct. That makes it an economic strike by definition. Favourable conditions. The company is thriving, which means it's making good money that the strike will interrupt. And low inventory means management can't just ship existing products to ride out the stoppage. Maximum revenue loss, maximum pressure on management. A recognition strike forces an employer to recognise a union as the bargaining representative. That's about establishing a union, not negotiating an existing contract over wages, an unfair labour practice. Strike protests illegal employer actions, violations of labour law. The scenario describes a standard economic negotiation with no mention of employer misconduct. A jurisdictional dispute involves which union or workers should handle specific job tasks. That's an inter-union problem, not a wage negotiation. Here's a WGU C202 OA exam tip for you. Economic strikes are about money, wages and benefits during contract negotiations. Favourable strike conditions mean the company is doing well and has no inventory cushion. Both parts have to match. Quick recall hook. Economic strike equals money fight. Wages and benefits are the battleground. 49. During a negotiation between a union and management, a representative realises that some concessions on working hours are acceptable because their side values job security more. Before responding, the representative considers what their side would do if no agreement is reached at all. Which negotiation concept describes this backup plan assessment? A. BATNA. B. Arbitration clause. C. Secondary boycott. D. Management rights review. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A. BATNA. Explanation: Option A is correct because BATNA stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement, representing what a party would do if no deal is reached, and it directly determines negotiating leverage and acceptable terms. Option B is incorrect because an arbitration clause is a contractual provision, binding both parties to accept an impartial third party's binding decision on disputes, not an individual assessment of alternatives to reaching agreement. Option C is incorrect because a secondary boycott involves encouraging third parties to stop doing business with a company, which was made illegal by the Taft-Hartley Act and is unrelated to assessing negotiation alternatives. Option D is incorrect because management rights review refers to examining the sections of a labour agreement that identify what management can decide unilaterally, not to evaluating what happens if negotiations fail entirely. During negotiations, a union representative realises concessions on working hours are acceptable because their side values job security more. Before responding, they consider what would happen if no agreement is reached at all. What concept describes this backup plan assessment? BATNA. Best alternative to a negotiated agreement. BATNA is the answer to the question, what do we do if this deal falls through? It represents your walkaway option, your plan B. Knowing your BATNA determines how much leverage you have and what terms are acceptable. If your alternative is terrible, you'll accept more concessions. If your alternative is strong, you can push harder. An arbitration clause is a contractual provision that commits both parties to accept a third party's binding decision. It's a mechanism written into agreements, not an individual assessment of what happens if negotiations collapse. A secondary boycott involves pressuring third parties to stop doing business with the company. The Taft-Hartley Act made that illegal. It has nothing to do with evaluating your alternatives. Management rights review means examining sections of a labour agreement about what management can decide on its own. That's about reading existing contract language, not about evaluating backup plans if talks fail. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. When a question describes someone thinking about what happens if no deal is reached, their fallback, their walkaway plan, so that's BATNA. The phrase "if no agreement is reached" is the trigger. Quick recall hook, BATNA equals plan B, your best option if the deal dies. 50. When negotiations stall and both sides are committed to their positions, but the issue is of moderate importance, a strategy of finding an expedient middle ground solution where both sides give up something can be most appropriate. Which conflict management strategy does this approach represent? A. Collaborating for full satisfaction. B. Avoiding the conflict entirely. C. Compromising for mutual concessions. D. Competing to win outright. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, C. Compromising for mutual concessions. Explanation. Option C is correct because compromising involves finding an expedient, mutually acceptable middle ground solution that partially satisfies both parties, which is best when the issue has modest importance and both sides hold firm. Option A is incorrect because collaborating attempts to find a solution that fully satisfies both parties' concerns, requiring deeper exploration of the issue rather than the quick middle ground resolution appropriate for moderately important disputes. Option B is incorrect because avoiding means not immediately pursuing either party's concerns and not addressing the conflict, which postpones resolution rather than finding the middle ground solution the situation calls for. Option D is incorrect because competing involves pursuing one's own concerns at the other person's expense in a win-lose approach, which risks damaging the relationship without producing the mutual concessions the situation requires. Negotiations have stalled, both sides are dug in, but the issue is only moderately important. A strategy of finding an expedient middle ground where both sides give something up makes the most sense here. Which conflict management strategy is this? Compromising for mutual concessions. Compromising means finding a quick, mutually acceptable solution that partially satisfies both parties. Nobody gets everything, but nobody walks away empty-handed either. It's the right move when the issue is moderately important and both sides are committed to their positions. You need a practical resolution, not a perfect one. Collaborating aims for full satisfaction of both parties. That requires deep exploration of the issue and creative problem solving. For a moderately important issue where both sides are entrenched, that level of effort isn't justified. Compromise is faster and good enough. Avoiding means not addressing the conflict at all, just letting it sit. That postpones resolution, and this situation calls for an actual middle ground solution, not delay. Competing means pursuing your own interests at the other side's expense. A win-lose approach. That risks damaging the relationship and doesn't produce the mutual concessions needed here. Here's a WGUC 202 OA exam tip for you. Compromise shows up when the issue is moderately important, both sides are firm, and a quick middle ground solution is needed. The keywords are expedient, middle ground. Both give up something, and moderate importance. Quick recall hook. Compromise equals meet in the middle. Both sides give a little, both sides get a little. You have reached the end of our first question set. For the free complete exam preparation, visit our website link in the description, where you find thousands more practice questions and comprehensive study guides. Thanks for studying with us today. See you in the next video.